I always believed loyalty meant something. That if you gave your all, sacrificed your time, your weekends, your mental peace, and sometimes even your relationships, the people at the top would notice. That they'd reward you. That the late nights, the early mornings, the skipped vacations, all of it would eventually add up to something that mattered. But I learned the hard way that when money's involved, power speaks louder than loyalty. And the man who fired me, he made one fatal mistake. He didn't know I held the final piece of the puzzle. It started 2 years before the chaos unfolded. Back then, I was working as a senior strategist for Tressler and Knox, a firm with a reputation for swallowing smaller companies, gutting them, and repackaging them as profitable shells. I didn't love the ethics, but I did love the game. The high-stakes world of mergers and acquisitions is like chess with real lives on the line. You make one wrong move and you're toast. But if you're good, if you're great, you become indispensable. And I was great. I knew every line of every deal, every risk, every clause. My name wasn't on the front of the building, but behind closed doors, they knew who made the wheels turn. That was especially true for Randall, Harrow, the executive vice president, and the man who would eventually stab me in the back. Randall had that corporate charm that made him seem invincible. Slick hair, slicker tongue. He was a shark in a $1,000 suit, and while he talked like he knew what he was doing, most of the heavy lifting fell on me. I didn't mind it, at least not in the beginning. I liked building the empires, even if someone else got the credit. Then came the Coraline deal. Coraline Systems was a revolutionary mid-sized tech firm that had developed a piece of software that could completely change the cybersecurity landscape. The patents were strong. The team was small but sharp. And best of all, they were desperate. One of their investors had backed out at the last second, leaving them scrambling for capital. Enter Tressler and Knox, dressed like saviors, but sniffing blood in the water. I was the one who flagged Coraline in the first place. I was the one who first got on a plane to meet with their founders, who walked them through our structure, who made them feel comfortable enough to consider acquisition rather than bankruptcy. Over the next 6 months, I poured everything into that deal. I learned their company inside and out. I developed trust with their CEO, Devin Marks, and his CTO, a woman named Lena Granger, who could sniff out corporate BS from a mile away. They didn't trust suits, but they trusted me. What they didn't know was that Randall had bigger plans. See, Randall wasn't just looking to acquire Coraline. He wanted to gut it, strip the intellectual property, and flip it to one of our overseas partners for triple the value. I knew that because he didn't care to hide it from me. He assumed I'd go along, just like always. But this time I hesitated. I saw real value in Coraline, not just financial, but technological. Their software had the potential to change lives, to make systems more secure, to reduce digital threats that were costing billions every year. They weren't just another shell to gut. And Randall didn't like hesitation. 1 week before the deal was set to close, he called me into his office. I could feel the energy before I even walked in. Cold, clinical, like a guillotine waiting to drop. Randall sat behind his desk, fingers steepled. The corners of his mouth curled in that smug little smile I'd grown to hate. "Mark," he said, "I think it's time we go in a different direction." I blinked. "Excuse me? You've been invaluable on this deal," he said, pretending to look sentimental. "But we need someone who's more aligned with the current leadership's objectives. Effective immediately, you're being released from your duties." Just like that. No thank you. No warning. Just a clean slice across the throat. I sat there, stunned, trying to process what was happening. All those months of work, gone. All those sleepless nights, strategy sessions, negotiations, erased. And Randall, he didn't care. He stood, walked around his desk, and offered a handshake like we were parting on friendly terms. But I didn't shake it. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "You just made a mistake you can't afford." He laughed. But here's the thing Randall didn't know. When I first started negotiating with Coraline, their founder Devin was so unsure of how to navigate the legal complexities. He offered me something unofficial in return for my help, an option to buy into the company personally, a small silent stake, no voting power, but real ownership. It was buried behind layers of documentation, completely legal and untraceable through the firm. It wasn't part of the Tressler and Knox pipeline. It was between me and Devin. At the time, I hadn't even considered exercising it. I just wanted to help them stay afloat. But now it was my ticket to revenge. Within 48 hours of being fired, I dusted off the paperwork, made the transfer, and became a 3.1% owner in Coraline Systems. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to block certain types of intellectual property sales. Enough to require my signature on specific licensing deals. And Randall had no idea. The day the final papers were to be signed, Randall flew out to Coraline headquarters with his new replacement, executive in tow, a guy named Greg who had a resume full of buzzwords and zero real experience. Devin greeted them politely but coldly. Lena didn't even pretend to hide her disdain. But Randall was too arrogant to notice. He pushed the documents across the table, smiled his signature predator grin, and said, "Let's make history." And that's when Devin handed the packet back. "I'm afraid there's a complication," he said, eyes flicking toward the door. I stepped in. Randall's face paled. "What the hell are you doing here?" "I'm here," I said, placing a copy of the ownership papers on the table. "Because you fired me without checking who actually had the final say." He snatched the documents, scanned them, then turned to Devin. "This is a joke, right?" Devin shook his head. "No joke. Mark owns a piece of this company. Has for months." Randall exploded. He tried to claim breach of protocol, accused me of conflict of interest, even threatened legal action. But it was all bark. My ownership was private, legal, and separate from Tressler and Knox. And without my signature, the IP rights they were planning to sell, untouchable. The deal fell apart. Randall went back to headquarters humiliated. And days later, I heard he was demoted. Apparently, the higher-ups didn't appreciate losing a multi-million-dollar flip because of personnel oversight. As for me, I stayed in touch with Devin and Lena. And 6 weeks later, I got a call. They wanted to restructure Coraline, keep it independent, expand the tech, and take it to market themselves. But they needed someone to lead the strategy. They wanted me, not as an employee, but as a partner. Today, I sit in an office of my own. No glass towers, no sharks circling for blood. Just a clean space, real innovation, and people who actually care about what they're building. Coraline went on to secure 2 major government contracts. Our valuation tripled in a year. And Randall, last I heard, he's consulting for minor firms in a city far from here, still trying to prove he's got vision. He doesn't. You don't fire the person holding the final piece. And you sure as hell don't fire the architect of the entire deal and think you'll walk away clean. Because sometimes the quiet ones, the ones who sit in the back, who do the work, who shake hands with purpose and build trust like it's a language, sometimes they're not just part of the machine. Sometimes they are the machine. And when you cut them out, you better pray they weren't holding the key to the whole kingdom.